Welcome to zebracode.io. This is a free coding curriculum for high schools, and you should have already reviewed our core concepts, but in this lesson, this is lesson 2, we're going to be writing our first programs from the Python command prompt, and we're going to be doing it both from the Windows environment and then from our browser base at Python Anywhere. So let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to start from our personal computer. If I type in CMD here, I can bring up the command prompt, and I can launch this application, the command prompt, and from here, I can load my Python command line, and I just type in Python, and here we're using Python 3.6, and we have our command prompt here that looks like the three triangles are the three greater than signs. And our first program is going to be very simple. We're just going to type in two numbers with plus, and we're going to add, and we can see that we can add two numbers together. Similarly, we can do something a little bit more complex. We can look at order of operations. Guess what this is going to do? First, it's going to do the multiplication, and then it's going to do the subtraction, and we get 0 because first we multiply 3 times 2, and that's 6 minus 6, and we get 0. Now, if we use parentheses and specifically highlight the order of operation, then we're going to get a different answer here. We have 6 minus 3. We do what's within the parentheses first, then multiply it by 2. For the input command, the syntax is x equals input. Next is the prompt. Within single quotes, enter a number. So we're telling the user to enter a number, and then we can take that number 3, and then we can store that value now. That value is stored in a variable called x. Now, similarly, we can create another variable called y and do another input statement. It's equal to input, enter another number, and we're going to have this value. We're going to prompt the user to enter another number, and what the user enters is going to be stored in the variable y. So in this case, we've entered 2. Now, whenever we use the input statement, we are storing string versions of the variable. So if I do x times y, in this case, I get an error. Now, whenever we program, we're going to get lots of errors, so we should not be afraid of this. And in this case, it's saying that it's a non-integer type instead of its type string. So what we need to do is convert, and we learned the two types of conversions. Now we're going to take the x value, convert it to an integer, the y value, convert it to an integer, and then multiply it, and now we get our result. We get 6, which we were expecting. So for computers, it's very important to understand the data type. We're only focusing on a couple data types now. We're looking at integers, and we're also looking at strings, but later on, we'll be looking at more data types. We're also going to introduce the idea of Boolean here. Now, let's do some similar exercises from our Python Anywhere, our browser-based Python. And the first thing we need to do is, once we've signed on to Python Anywhere, is to go to the bash command and open up a console. And here, we're going to be opening up a bash console, and we can type in Python 3, and this is going to be opening up Python 3 version. We have 3.43 here within Python Anywhere, and we can see our 3 greater than signs or triangles to represent the Python prompt. Let's do some work with some strings. Let's type in a string, hello, or happy, and we know it's a string because of the double quotes or single quotes. We can use either. We just need to be consistent. And let's do happy and concatenate it with two strings, happy and clown. Now notice there's a space at the beginning of clown, and we get our results back, which is a string, happy clown. And similarly, we can do some multiplication with strings, and this really doesn't make sense. It makes sense to do multiplication with integers, but in this case, if I do happy and I multiply it by 3, I get happy, 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 a space in between each, simply because there's a space at the end of happy. So we can work with strings similarly as we have worked with numbers. And now let's go ahead and use our input command. And remember, anything coming in from the input is a string, and I'm creating a variable called adj, and it's going to be equals the input of enter an adjective. So the prompt back to the user is enter an adjective, and I can enter the word happy here. And now I'm going to do another input statement with noun, and I'm going to say input. The prompt to the user is going to be enter an occupation, which I'm going to store in the variable called noun. So we see the prompt to the user, and I'm going to enter teacher in this case, which is the occupation. Now, if I want to concatenate these two together, because I've stored them now in these variables, I can say, or I can actually build a Mad Lib, do something a little more complex. I'm going to take the word the, and every time it's in single quotes or double quotes, that's going to be a string. I'm going to concatenate it with our variable called adj, which is an adjective. I'm going to put a space in between them, concatenate it as well with our variable noun, and I'm going to say ran down the street. I'm just going to add a little bit of text here, and when we concatenate all of these together, we will have the happy teacher ran down the street. The happy is the adjective, our adj variable, and teacher is stored in the variable called noun. So we can do things with strings just as we can do with numbers, and primarily the plus sign for strings is concatenation. concatenation. That's primarily what we're going to use as opposed to addition if we're working with numbers. Now, we can also do less than and greater than. We're going to do this with numbers, but we can also do this with strings. I can say, for example, apple is less than potato. And that's true because alphabetically, apple comes before potato. And we can also do this with numbers. So if I go 3 is less than 4, that's going to come back to be true. Now, Python has a Boolean, and a Boolean can either be true or false. So if I say 5 is less than 2, that's false, and that's why we get the result false. Or I can say 3 is greater than 3, that's false as well because they're the equivalent or they're equal, and so we get false. So just as we can compare alphabetically strings, we can also compare numbers just as we do in math courses or if we're trying to alphabetize a list. So those are some things we can do whether we're doing it Python Anywhere or whether we're doing it on our own PC using the command prompt. So this is zebracode.io. It's a free curriculum for high school students. This is lesson 2, and if you haven't become familiar, go ahead and explore the website. We explore the main concepts, we give demos, there's some assignments or homework problems, and even some solutions. Thank you.